Welcome to the Problematic Gaze with me, Dr. Lee Arnott.
And me, Dave Moor.
Each episode will take a piece of historical pop culture and ask if it's problematic, why it's problematic, and what that says about society and culture then and now.
And before we take a deep dive into our chosen topic, we'll have a look at the news events of the day and the cultural landscape, just to put our chosen topic into context.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, gazers. And
hello,
Dave.
gazers. Hello, gazers. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Dave.
Slick,
Slick.
professional.
Slick, honestly.
Do you know what? I'm sweating.
Me too, it's warm in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're together still, everybody.
Yeah, I'm sweating cobs because I've got my thermals on, because the last 2 days it's been absolutely brassic, -10 at night. And I thought, when I went outside, I'm really cold, I should put my thermals on. So
Yeah.
the day I put my thermals on, it starts warming up.
Yeah. I mean, it's 25 degrees now, so...
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just like wilting,
Yeah.
like lettuce on a plate.
What an image. So what are we looking at today, Dave?
So today we're getting in our little time machine and going all the way back to 1967.
Groovy, baby.
Yes, the swinging 60s, to watch a BBC TV comedy called Till Death Us Do Part.
Yes. What is your relationship to Till Death Us Do Part?
Well, I think a lot of gazers our age in the UK...
25.
Yes, but 25 and under, will have heard of Alf Garnett as this kind of racist old bigot from this TV show. Whether that's fair or not remains to be seen.
I think 100% accurate.
And I have actually seen a couple of episodes in the past.
Yeah.
It's obviously not something that is on the top of your list of things to watch, because it is kind of science of the past.
I'm the same, and I remember it came back in the 80s or 90s, In Sickness and in Health it was called. But it was one of those things that, again, was like a seminal sitcom. But as we've seen, nothing ages like a sitcom does it?
No.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as more things change, the more things stay the same in some respects.
God, I can't say I was looking forward to watching this because I expected it to be a bit, as it is a sitcom from 1967. But wow, what a fascinating piece of social history.
It was great. I mean, I know we're going to deep dive later, but it just flew by. It's 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Rattled off. The script was so tight. Bang, bang, bang. And there were so many kind of shocking elements to it.
Yeah.
But also so many brilliant moments to it as well.
Yeah, and the social history in it was, wow, this is produced at the time when Britain is really changing, and I think you get that generational clash in this.
Yeah.
And also what it means to lose empire and stuff, so...
Well, this is right up your strata, isn't it?
Right up my strata.
Dr. Lee Arnott, social historian.
Yeah. So, should we have a look at what the news events were of 1967?
Okay, have you got over the upset of us introducing a proper jingle for these days?
I am embracing change, David.
Okay.
You know, and I feel that if that's what it needs to get us to the Royal Albert Hall, I will put my little xylophone away and I will bow to the pressure of the 49th floor of PG Towers.
Fine, yeah. Do you want to do it one last time for good measure? And I'll bleed into our new jingle. Can I have a ceremonial ending of the old jingle and bleed into the new one?
Okay, all right.
Okay, ready?
And so let's cross to the news desk.
There we go. I think the ceremonial handing over of the baton has taken place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, what a busy year 1967 was. On the 4th of January, racing driver and motorboat racer Donald Campbell was killed in a crash on Coniston Water in the Lake District while attempting to break his own speed record. You can actually see the footage of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's grim, isn't it?
It is grim.
But I always get a sense of hubris about it as well.
It's kind of nature's way of saying, hang on a minute.
Yeah, sort yourself out.
Sort yourself out
Yeah.
of it. Obviously not. Obviously poor Donald Campbell and his family and any living relatives. Apologies for that.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, on the 15th of January, the United Kingdom entered the first round of negotiations for the European Economic Community membership in Rome. On the 16th of January, Italy announced support for the UK's application. Oh, I can sense that's going to go really well.
Oh, yeah, and this is going to go rumble on and on this year, let me tell you. I think we'll come back to that. And the 23rd of January, Milton Keynes is unveiled. Intended to accommodate the overspill population from London, it will become the United Kingdom's largest new town, with the area's population multiplying during the 1970s and 1980s.
Oh, wow, Milton Keynes.
Milton Keynes.
Near Bletchley. Now, have you been to Bletchley Park?
No, I haven't.
This is a World War II and Cold War
a cypher place.
Yeah, really, really great, actually. You know, Alan Turing was there when he wrote the code for the Enigma machine. So yeah, it's well worth a visit. I love it. That's all I've got to say on that note.
Good. Well said.
Yes, visit Bletchley. Okay, so the 7th of February, rearing its ugly head, the British National Front was founded by A.K. Chesterton by an amalgamation of the British National Party and the League of Empire Loyalists.
The 4th of March, the first North Sea gas was pumped ashore at Easington, East Riding of Yorkshire. A big moment for Britain, producing our own gas from the sea. Also has a lot of cultural impact. You get a lot of episodes of Doctor Who, The Avengers, which start to riff on this idea of gas being brought from the sea.
Did you hear that? Apparently, according to the screaming Daily Mail headlines now, we're running out of gas.
Oh.
Well, you've got plenty to hand around. Sitting next to you for an hour. Soon know about it.
It's my national service.
On the 31st of March, at the Astoria Theatre in Finsbury Park, London, Jimi Hendrix sets fire to his guitar on stage for the first time.
How did that go, Dave?
Well, he was taken to hospital suffering burns to his hands.
I mean...
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll, Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to Casualty.
Yeah.
On the 8th of April, Sandy Shaw wins Eurovision with Puppet on a String, a song that she absolutely loathed and was coerced into performing and said it was one of the worst moments of her career, but a great moment for the country. It's the first time we win.
Well, suck it up, Sandy, because if you hadn't had Puppet on a String, we'd be wandering around barefoot in the park, probably.
To be fair, she did have a very successful career already.
Oh, did she?
Yes.
All right, fine. Ignore that. I'm going to cut that out because it makes me look stupid.
Don't diss Sandy.
On the 2nd of May, Harold Wilson announced that the United Kingdom had decided to apply for EEC membership.
Yes, I've been talking about it, and now we're definitely going to do it.
Right.
This will continue to rumble.
Mm-hmm.
On the 27th of June, the first automatic cash machine is installed in Barclays Bank in Enfield. Oh, that's a little interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, cash machine. Now we've all got one on our phone, really, haven't we?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, okay, on the 9th of August, sad news, playwright Joe Orton was battered to death by his lover, Kenneth Halliwell, who then committed suicide at their North London home.
Yeah,
gosh.
God.
I mean, have you read Joe Orton's diaries?
Yes.
They're great, aren't they?
Oh, my God, yeah.
Have you seen the film with Gary Oldman?
Yeah.
What's it called? Prick Up Your Ears.
Yeah.
I think that might be a good one for us to watch at some point.
Yes, I agree. The 27th of August, same month, the Beatles manager Brian Epstein dies of an accidental overdose in London.
Yes, he was secretly gay, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Beatles famously wrote the song "You've Got to Hide Your Love Away."
And of course, around this time, all the discussions about the Wolfenden Report are taking place about legalising homosexuality in Britain, which will eventually happen. Back to the EEC, the 27th of November, Charles de Gaulle, President of France, once again vetoes British entry into the European Economic Community.
What's Charles de Gaulle got against us?
I know. He stayed in London during the war as well and ran France from London. It's like, you cheeky bugger.
On the 11th of December, the Concorde supersonic aircraft was unveiled in Toulouse, France.
Yeah.
Never went on Concorde.
No,
I've been round one,
Did
actually. There's one at, is it Duxford Air Museum?
Yeah, probably.
Yes, been round one.
Yeah, I never went on it. It was very posh, wasn't it? It was super,
It was
you had to
really
be super
posh.
rich
It
to
was
go on
beyond our
Concorde.
means, wasn't it?
I was happy with the minibus. Should we have a look at what was happening on TV at the time as well?
Let's do it.
There's a lot of notable debuts and TV stuff of 1967. In January, the Forsyte Saga debuts on BBC Two, will eventually get moved to BBC One in September, and then becomes this massive ratings juggernaut. 18 million people every Sunday night tuning in for this Victoriana saga that makes massive household names of all the stars. And it's the first British television programme ever to be sold to Russia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Proper event TV, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really one of those cultural lodestones, the Forsyte Saga as well, and often gets referenced in books of the time and cultural commentary of the time, you know.
The Prisoner has its UK premiere on ATV and Grampian Television. The world premiere of the series occurs on the 5th of September when the series debuts on CTV in Canada. The Prisoner, I never really got into... obviously, the repeats I never got into.
Yeah. It was one of those shows, again, that's kind of held up as emblematic of the 60s, like The Avengers. Similar kind of vibe, similar kind of level of surrealism in somebody's house. But I just found it a little bit...
It's a bit dull.
Yeah.
Being chased around by a giant ball on the beach.
Ball. Yeah, I've done that myself many times.
Yeah.
Have you been to Portmeirion?
No.
It was filmed. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like it's in Wales, and it's this recreation of a 17th century Italian village. They filmed the Doctor Who there in 76 as well. The biggest TV show of the year was broadcast in November, when the live BBC One broadcast of Miss World is watched by over 23 million people.
Wow. And that's just in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, again, Miss World, we forget what a phenomenon that was. It was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, look, this is before the world of, dare I say it, women's flesh is widely available at your fingertips now. But there was probably, for a lot of people who didn't live in Soho and couldn't put a magazine under their Macintoshes, one of the only chances to see a bit of flesh.
Yeah, but also the whole family would watch it.
Yeah.
You know? And there's no page 3 at this point still. No. So you're right. It's probably one of the few occasions where you're able to look at women being in bikinis.
And it's acceptable.
Yeah.
2nd of December, colour television is officially launched on BBC Two.
Yeah. And that's a bit of a misnomer because it's not until the mid-70s that for the first time the majority of people have a colour television. So most people will still be watching colour shows in black and white. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously, I mean, it's been in America for ages and ages, so it was only a matter of time before, well, the world is colour, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you can't be carried on in black and white.
Yeah.
On Christmas Day, the bastards, the BBC show the final edition of the Sooty show after it's been cancelled.
Oh, God.
No more Sooty.
Scrooge behaviour, that.
Yeah. However, next year it's back on ITV, where it will remain, I was never a big fan of Sooty. Sweep was my
Sweep
hero.
was my favourite because he was naughty,
He was
wasn't he?
naughty, yeah. And he was funny, and he still makes me laugh.
Yes, there was something on TikTok over Christmas of Sweep singing Christmas songs.
Yes.
Very funny.
Other debuts that year, we have shows like Ask the Family, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons.
The Golden Shot, Man in a Suitcase. Is that the sort of kinky sex game?
No. Again, on the success of The Avengers, you get a lot of those kind of shows like Department S, The Champions, Man in a Suitcase was one of the bigger ones. It's a kind of spy, espionage thriller. James Bond has had a massive impact on culture. So spies and the spy genre becomes huge throughout this period before it kind of dies off in about 69, 70. And Trumpton debuts this year.
Is that with the fireman?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it's
Cuckoo,
Dibble and
Barley McGrew, Cuthbert Dibble and Snatch. I don't think it's Snatch, but we'll just say that. So that's where the TV landscape was of 1967. Should we have a look at the top 40?
Let's do it.
This is the top 40 from the week commencing the 16th of February, 1967. Now, I'm quietly confident we're not going to know any of these.
Yeah, me too. Me too. This might be very quick.
Yes, let's start at number 40. Okay, I can see lots of names I know.
Yes, Val Doonican, 39.
Tom Jones, 38. Donovan, 37.
The Who, 36. The Beat Goes On, Sonny and Cher. We know that one, don't we?
I don't know that one.
And the Beat
Sonny
Goes On.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't realise that was Sonny and Cher.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was theirs originally, but...
Right. The Hollies are at number 34. The Seekers, Herman's Hermit. There's a kind of hush. I know that because the Carpenters cover it in the 70s.
Yes. Georgie Fame, I know he was popular in the 60s. Number 28, Sitting in the Park.
Cream were popular, I know.
Yes, that's Eric Clapton, isn't it?
I Feel Free. We know that one.
Do we?
Yeah, we do. I guarantee you'll know that song.
Right.
Ooh.
Steady.
Blank looks. Keith, number 24. Just Keith.
Oh, okay. I wonder whatever happened to Keith.
Yeah, a catchy song called 98.6.
That must have been a radio station.
Yeah, must have been
radio station. Yeah. The Monkees, Last Train to Clarksville. We know that one.
We know that one.
Okay, we're warming up now.
Standing in the Shadows of Love. There's Four Tops. I know that one.
Number 22. Oh, Elvis at number 21.
Indescribably Blue.
Oh, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah. Edelweiss, Vince Hill.
Number 20.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, The Sound of Music must have come out by now.
Yes, it will have done. It's one. I think it's the biggest film of this year.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and the biggest soundtrack, for sure. It always makes me chuckle when people talk about, the revolution in music and stuff. The biggest selling soundtrack in this country was The Sound of Music. And number 2 was the Black and White Minstrel Show album.
Okay,
yeah,
we don't approach.
Let's not go there.
No.
Okay, still some big names here.
Donovan again, Mellow Yellow, number 17.
It Takes Two, Marvin Gaye and Kim Weston at number 18.
Yeah.
The Spencer Davis Group, number 16. Oh, One For You, number 15.
Why is Ken Dodd one for me?
I don't know.
Get the tickling stick out. Number 15, Let Me Cry on Your Shoulder, Ken Dodd.
Out without his burnt hands at number 14, it's Jimi Hendrix with Hey Joe.
At number 13, Jim Reeves. I understand he was quite popular, actually.
Yeah.
I won't come in while he's there. We've all. I won't come in while he's there. We've all said that at one point or other.
Tom Jones is looking for the green grass of home at number 12.
Did you think Tom Jones was sexy in his heyday? I mean, there was something about him, wasn't it?
Oh my God. I'd have thrown knickers for sure.
I'd knocked him out.
Wet, sopping. Right, the top 10.
Oh, here comes my baby, the Tremolos, number 10.
The Tremolos, the lead singer was Chesney Hawkes' dad.
Oh. Right.
Musical dynasty.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fact fans.
The Royal Guardsmen are at number 9 with Snoopy versus the Red Baron, which sounds like a level in a game.
Sugartown, Nancy Sinatra.
Don't know it.
Number
Obviously
8.
know Nancy Sinatra. Number 7, The Move with Night of Fear. Don't know it.
that one.
Oh, I've said this many times.
This is your anthem.
I've been a bad, bad boy. No, that's the name of the song, then.
Yeah.
By Paul Jones. He was a face at the time.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a bit like a 60s version of Paul Nichols. Paul Nicholas, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, Release Me, Engelbert Humperdinck.
Yeah, said that before as well.
Number 3, said this one as well, Let's Spend the Night Together, the Rolling Stones.
Okay, we're warming up here. Oh, the Monkees, I'm a Believer, classic to this day.
Number 2.
Number 2.
Should we see what number 1 is?
Okay,
Let's
Pop
have a look.
Pickers.
Oh. This is my song. Petula Clark.
Petula.
Right. Well.
Okay, that was a little bit of a damp squib at the end.
Well,
there.
Petula's great, but I don't know that one.
No.
No.
It's no Downtown, is it?
No Downtown.
Okay, so to the matter in hand, till death us do part. But before we do that, I just want to delve into our bulging mailbag, which we haven't done for a while.
Right.
So we've had an email on our problematicgaze at gmail.com, theproblematicgaze at gmail.com, from Karen in Blackburn.
Right.
She says, really enjoyed the episode on cruising from last week. Really disappointed to hear that you didn't mention Jane McDonald once.
Ah, we share your pain, Karen. You know, I was expecting Jane to burst out at some point in that film to sing a song, but nothing.
A bit of Ray of Light.
Yeah, nothing.
Bit of Cake in the Ocean or anything like that.
Nothing.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. I mean, you know, we were expecting Jane McDonald to pop up in the film, the 1980 film Cruising, set in crime-ridden New York, but she just didn't appear.
She didn't, but we hope that the vast quantities of fisting lube helped Karen. You know, helped assuage the pain.
I don't think it helped Karen.
No, it didn't.
No. But anyways, apologies for that, Karen. I think we should maybe do a Cruising with Jane McDonald special.
There's absolutely nothing problematic about that.
No, there isn't.
No.
It's BAFTA winning.
BAFTA winning.
If anything, it's the opposite of problematic. I could watch it all day long.
Yeah, me
not
too.
have a problem with it. Saint Jane McDonald. Surely she's going to be Dame Jane McDonald at some point.
Yeah, she must be.
But I'd like to think that Jane might not accept a damehood.
She would.
She would.
She totally would.
Yeah, she totally would.
Totally would.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Karen from Blackburn, for that. Onwards.
Right, so we're looking at episode 9 of season 2 of Till Death Us Do Part, which is called State Visit. It's available on YouTube. We'll link it in the show notes.
Till Death Us Do Part was written by Johnny Spate, quite a prolific TV writer at the time. He started writing for radio for comics like Frankie Howard, Vic Oliver, Arthur Askey, and then he wrote for Morecambe and Wise, Peter Sellers. His most famous creation is Till Death Us Do Part.
Not a lot of plot to synopsis in this one. Alf Garnett is basically raging because Harold Wilson, the Prime Minister, is inviting a Russian diplomat to visit, a state visit, and cue lots of him shouting about the state of the country and his wife rolling her eyes and his son and daughter telling Dad that he's too old-fashioned and bigoted.
Yeah.
End of.
Yeah, the first 15 minutes of this was basically just a massive rant, wasn't it? A kind of monologue from Alf Garnett.
Yeah. He's basically just shouting at birds.
Yes. He is. It kind of, I mean, I know you've talked a lot about masculinity and you've done a lot of work on the challenges to masculinity, but this did feel as though Alf Garnett was being challenged by the way society is evolving and feels very emasculated and not powerful enough to do anything about it. So all he can do really is just shout into the ether about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell that he is very much the patriarch of this family, but his kids are just, oh, Dad, shut up, will you? You know, so even that family setup is being challenged from within, as well as these external changes which are taking place, which, you know, he can't get his head around.
So we should just explain very quickly. There are 4 characters in this setup. It's kind of a multi-camera sitcom setup set in a living room and a kitchen of a house, 2 up, 2 down in Wapping. So we've got Alf Garnett, who's, like we say, is the father figure. So we've got his wife, Else, played by Dandy Nichols as well, who is often referred to as you silly moo.
Yeah, because originally the script had him calling her you silly cow, but the BBC vetoed it, and silly moo becomes a catchphrase.
And then we've got their daughter, Rita, who's played by Una Stubbs, and Rita's husband, Mike Rawlins, played by Anthony Booth.
Yeah.
So, yes, Alf rants into the ether, and he's constantly challenged and wound up by his daughter and husband.
Yeah, and that first 15 minutes is basically Brexit, in a nutshell.
It really is. I mean, you could transfer it to the modern day quite easily.
God, absolutely. I mean, he's reading the Daily Mirror, which he calls an anti-British rag.
Because it's left-wing.
Yes. And in the text of the newspaper he's reading, it says that Britain is a tiny offshore island, no longer a first division world power. And he can't get over this. And it really speaks of the disintegration of empire that was happening at the time and the effect on the British psyche, I guess. And as we know today, there are still a lot of people who can't get over the fact that the empire no longer exists and was seen as a marvellous, great thing. There's a picture of Winston Churchill hanging up in his house. He's got a picture of the Queen, you know that he'd be flying a flag of St George in his garden. Not to sound like a snob, but he would.
So can I just play devil's advocate here a little bit? You know, because we regard Alf Garnett as kind of right-wing, bigoted person. I don't know how else to describe it. But this is like 21, 22 years after the end of the war. The old guard, the people who actually fought in the war, I don't know what role Alf Garnett played, but how do these people feel coming out of the war? Then they won the war, they fought fascism, and this is what they see the world around them is perhaps not taken off after the war. It's not like the prosperity and the green pastures of a nation that has won the war so significantly. Yeah. So their opinion of what's going on in the world, can that be justified to a certain extent, do you think?
Well, what happens after the war, you're right. Immediately after the war, for the 50s, Britain is in the shits, basically. No money, nothing to do anything. But by this time, Britain is really booming. And it's about the mid-late 60s that we have pretty much 100% employment. The generation, the young people at this point, who are the baby boomers of today, for the first time are earning great money. They've got independence. They've got their own culture, their own... So the gap between generations has really, really widened here.
Okay.
So Alf Garnett would definitely call his daughter and son-in-law woke. Yeah. Because for him, they are. Because they just say to his face, you're a stupid old bigot. You know, you're old-fashioned, your views are outdated. And it astonishes me that actually the views Alf Garnett is espousing are still the ones that the likes of Farage, etc.
Who are the boomers?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of... I always think this about people in general, as I'm kind of watching people's attitudes and opinions shift. At what point do you stop being a kind of like a liberal-minded, free-thinking, you know, taking in everything the world has to offer to kind of process your opinion on things, to being... Then there's a transition where you kind of become closed off and start to veer over to the right a little bit more. I'm not saying that happens to everybody, but it does seem to happen to a lot of people.
There's a ton of studies about this. Yeah. And it's longitudinal studies, like over decades, have shown that it tends to happen in their 40s. People in their 40s start to veer to the right. However, in the last 5 or 6 years, it started to change. And actually more older people veer towards the left in this country now. Now, whether that remains the case remains to be seen, because obviously this is ongoing. But traditionally 40s.
I wonder if it's to do with social media. Social media spouts out two polarising views of the world, the kind of shifting over to the right wing and the fascistic elements. But also, you know, there's a fight back, there's a counterculture as well of people veering over more to the left. You know, it opens your eyes to the world a lot more and makes you feel like actually it takes all sorts to make the world go round, and it stops you from being closed off.
I think there's something in that, because we have one of the most right-wing press in the world. The majority of our press are right-wing. And until the advent of social media, most of our news came from that. So there's something in that, I'm sure. That
people are getting wise to it, aren't they? They're being wise to it. They're not so naive as to believe everything they read in the press. They kind of, I think they've become a bit more wise to, this is the narrative we've been fed, but it's not necessarily the narrative that we have to follow. You know, the papers have lost their power, haven't they? In that respect?
Yeah, increasingly so as well. Yeah.
Okay, but yes, back to Alf Garnett. He says about the UK no longer being a first division country. It's lost its footing in the world. He says the Labour press is turning traitor on us. I mean, that's the language of today as well.
Absolutely.
You know, the word traitor's bandied about quite often, isn't it? He refers to the empire as the British lion. He uses a lot of derogatory words about foreigners, about people of colour, which we're not going to repeat here. It is pretty despicable, the words that they use, but was a kind of common parlance of the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, and there's actually and I was really surprised at how political this was, and how it really is reflecting the current political situations. He's talking about Ian Smith, who's the Prime Minister of South Africa, who is in negotiations to return South Africa to a black government, and he can't get his head around that. There's lots of talk of Harold Wilson, who's the then Prime Minister here, you know, and obviously he's Labour, so Alf Garnett's hideous with him. But what was interesting was the pushback from the other characters when he's spouting this language. Eunice Stubbs said, your dad is stupid and bigoted. Tony Booth says, what have we got, you know, as a country that people could possibly want, you know? So, and it's that fine line, isn't it? Because Warren Mitchell hated Alf Garnett. They all hated him. And it's ostensibly a satire on racism. But as we know, those views that Alf Garnett is spouting off get taken as gospel by people who want to believe in that stuff. And there's a fine line, which unfortunately I think this show was criticised for, because it gets taken as actually this is what we're saying, when it's actually the opposite is what they're trying to say. That this stuff is rubbish. But because it's just him shouting, you know, he kind of overrides it, doesn't he?
I mean, when we were watching it last night, I was really enjoying it, because I could really see what they were trying to do with this character, which was parody him. And I think a lot of people watching today, if they watched it now, I'd urge our gazers to watch it, because I just saw it for what it was, which was a parody. They're sending this man up and his bigoted attitudes up. But like you say, you know, when people have very limited resources to be fed, whether it's through the TV or through the papers, you can quite easily see how people in 1967 watching this believed and agreed with what Alf Garnett was espousing.
Well, when he's talking about those derogatory terms, the audience is laughing away, you know. It's a bit like in Fawlty Towers it happens as well, doesn't he? When the Major's talking exactly the same language he uses.
And Basil's talking about the Germans.
Yeah. I mean, you get the character that Alf is very much stuck in the past, don't you?
Yeah.
While the new future is represented by Eunice Stubbs and Tony Booth.
Yes. It was really interesting to hear what he was, Alf Garnett's opinions about monarchy. So he really holds the Queen and the monarchy in high regard. He says that royalty is a divine right descended from God.
Yeah. And that was interesting, I thought, because we forget how much of a Christian country Britain was until the late 80s. And it still plays a big part in lots of people's lives. And although church attendance is falling really dramatically now, lots of surveys at the time show that people still have a faith which is very personal to them. It's just they don't express it necessarily. And there is still that idea that, I mean, if you saw with the coronation of King Charles, that it's almost medieval, you know, the idea that God has anointed this person who by proxy of birth becomes king or queen.
It felt really out of place, the coronation. Now, to me, in my opinion, obviously everyone else has their own opinion, but in my opinion, it just looked so antiquated, dated. Whereas, you know, you look back at Diana's funeral or, you know, the old pictures of the Queen's coronation, it felt as though it had a home in the national consciousness. Whereas it just felt very disparate and remote.
Yes.
The King's coronation.
Yeah. I remember one year watching, I think it was the state opening of Parliament, and seeing the crown that the Queen wore at the time in its own carriage being led down the Mall. And it was like, are we in the 16th century? What's going on? You know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Alf's got this book, hasn't he? He's got this one book on his shelf. You know, again, there's a little poke at how ignorant this man is. And it shows, and I love that they've got this picture in the book that they have to hold very still for the camera to catch it in a really unnatural way, don't they? Yeah. And with big hairy hands holding it, supposed to be doing the stomps. And it's basically the descendant of the Queen at the bottom and all the gods and kings and queens. And it goes right up at the top to Muhammad. And of course, Una Stubbs and Tony Booth are laughing at Alf's ignorance here, because Muhammad is obviously not a white man, but Alf Garnett won't have it. And he says, all our gods are white. You know, Muhammad is brown because he's got a suntan. That's his words. He's freaked the fuck out at the thought that the Queen is descended from a brown man. You know, it's just...
Where has he got this book from? I mean, where the notion that the Queen's descended from Muhammad, where has that come from?
I mean...
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
There's a little hint of nuclear fears, I noticed.
We're kind of at the height of the Cold War.
Yeah, well, starting to get there, for sure. Alf's worried that with the Russians coming over, and he draws some allusions to them being incompetent and that they might press the wrong button. Yeah. Because the Cuban Missile Crisis has only been 4 years earlier, when everybody thought the world was going to end in nuclear apocalypse. So it's still really, really prevalent, I guess. Oh, and then he gets nostalgic about Dunkirk and the Blitz spirit, the darkest hour. Again, these tropes that are just repeated again and again and again today. Astonishes me that this show is nearly 60 years old.
Again, playing devil's advocate, but they are allowed to get nostalgic about Dunkirk and the Blitz spirit and the darkest hour, aren't they?
In 1967, absolutely, because they lived through it. You know, I imagine Alf was doing national service. I don't think he had an illustrious army career, but he would have been involved. Else would have been probably in the WRVS, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, absolutely.
But talking about it now...
But the one thing they talk about is how 1966, the World Cup has given them pride again, which is interesting. So the idea that they've lost pride already, but it's been restored. But then he starts kicking off the fact that the England coach has been given an MBE by Harold Wilson, you know, who's Labour. So, you know.
At some point, Mike, the son-in-law, played by Tony Booth, gets dressed up in a kind of Sergeant Pepper's outfit, which Alf takes real offence to, doesn't he? Why?
Yes.
Why?
Well, Sergeant Pepper's out in, I think, March this year, and it causes a stir partly because the Beatles are dressed in military uniforms.
I see.
And until that point, the military uniform was reserved only for the armed forces.
I see.
And it's a really clear visual example of how this clash of generations is taking place, because young people, Army and Navy stores become a thing at this point, that these military kind of trappings of clothing are retaken by the youth and worn in a different, often ironic way, which is very triggering for the older generation. And so when Alf walks in, his reaction is probably a very genuine reaction that people would have had to see a young person in a uniform that's not part of the armed forces. I thought it was super interesting, actually, watching that.
Yeah, you see, I kind of, that was lost on me a little bit, so I'm glad that you've kind of...
Yeah, and it's kind of like, to them, it's like insulting the Queen, you know?
I see.
You're not just wearing it, you're literally insulting the very fabric of British society by wearing it.
I see.
But then, of course, this is when men start to wear hair long, and that's another... It's a real... Fashion kind of comes into its own in terms of political statements at this point. This is when it starts to be able to be used and weaponised by younger generations.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is 1967, and of course 1968 is a real seminal year in kind of world politics, isn't it? I mean, there's so much going on in America. Martin Luther King is assassinated, Bobby Kennedy is assassinated. You know, there's the rise of kind of like, you know, there is a more right-wing element to the American politics. And then you have the student riots in Paris as well. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like a real state of flux, politics, not just in the UK, but around the world, isn't it?
It really feels like the establishment is changing. But it's easy to over-egg it, because also at the same time, what you have in the suburbs, in small towns, nothing changes. Even Una Stubbs' outfit. And Una Stubbs, by the way, gorgeous in this beautiful Mary Quant dress on.
Yeah.
The miniskirt is a good example of a fashion being used to challenge and to shock,
Being political.
Yeah, a miniskirt on television. Before, actually, Emma Peel is the first woman to wear a miniskirt on TV. Before that, if a character wore a miniskirt, the audience would recognise that they were supposed to be under 16 years old.
I see.
So Doctor Who girls in the early 60s were 15 years old, their characters. They were allowed to wear miniskirts, but when a woman like Diana Rigg starts to wear a miniskirt, it's all,
I see.
all changed.
Okay.
So even Una's outfit is a little... I mean, she's obviously rocking the look that was the time then, but yeah, and another example of how fashion is being used to really differentiate generations.
Yeah. So then we go out of the domestic setting and Alf takes Els to Downing Street to supposedly protest.
Yeah.
The Russian diplomat coming to see Harold Wilson, etc. And they kind of stand there watching Downing Street. Els says, "Oh, look at Downing Street. Doesn't it look posh?" And Alf says, "It's only a terrace, isn't it?" Namely, they're only just the same as us.
Yeah.
We live in a terrace, they live in a terrace.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really good that Alf is there to kind of be a vocal agitator. But the minute a policeman walks past, he goes silent, gives him a nod. So it's obvious that he's very conformist as well. He's not as, it's all kind of like all mouth and no action.
Exactly.
Kind of person. He well, again, he kind of doesn't challenge authority the way that the younger generation do kind of challenge.
Exactly. He's absolutely right, yeah. And again, with no social media, that's what people did, didn't they? They were in their houses, but as soon as they're actually there, oh, sorry, yes, my lord, yeah.
And then they go to Buckingham Palace as well, don't they, to watch the changing of the guard. Elsie says, it must be quite hard on the Queen to have all this this loud band music playing. And Alf says, oh yeah, and what if Philip has had a skinful as well?
Yeah. And she's saying like, oh, what a nightmare to clean it must be. It must be thousands of rooms. It's just, and obviously they don't go to Downing Street in Buckingham Palace. They're in the side of the studio in front of a back projection. And then there's kind of
stock footage, isn't there, of the changing of the guard and things. It was really sweet, to see them production values. From 1967. I thought this was really, really well written by Johnny Spate.
Right.
And so well performed. You could tell it was really well rehearsed. And you could tell all four actors worked really, really well together and they were enjoying what they were doing. Yeah. It was a tight script, really, really tight delivery. It rattled through. Yeah. It was kind of like an assault on the senses, really.
Yeah, it was. Literally with him shouting at you. Yeah.
Because you always kind of, you've always got this idea in your head, or at least I have that, watching old things from the 60s, black and white things, they're going to be terribly dull and boring and slow paced. Whereas this was anything but, wasn't it?
I think this is one of the most interesting things I've watched when we've been doing this podcast, just for the absolute snapshot of Britain in flux and those cultural changes which are taking place and the effects of them. Yeah. And also, the more things change, as we keep saying on this podcast, this was the more things changey episode of anything I think we've watched.
Yeah. You could restage this today and just change the names of the politicians.
Yes, absolutely.
And it would stand up, wouldn't it?
Absolutely,
really, as a snapshot of working class people. Not all working class people, that's gross generalisation, but there are pockets of, you can imagine this conversation being had in many a household.
Absolutely. And there was one little thing which I loved, and there's, because we also don't realise how much language gets lost and falls out of usage. Alf talks about Harold Wilson having these Buckshee weekends, which are like freebie weekends. And I haven't heard Buckshee for ages, but Buckshee is still used in Northumberland. Right. And it means that if you get a Buckshee job, it means a little job on the side, that's money paid under your elbow, not declared kind of thing. So I thought, wow, I've just never heard that for ages. And there it is in common usage in 1967. But of course, you probably never heard of it, I guess. Yeah.
All right, then, before we sign off, why don't we just have a little chat about each of the individual actors?
Yeah.
So, Warren Mitchell. Yeah. He hated playing Alf Garnett, didn't he?
He didn't hate playing him, but he hated the character.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, distinguished career, huge amount of work on stage, and was working till he died in his 80s, I think it was. Yeah. And pops up in all those other big TV shows of the days, in a couple of Avengers episodes, playing very much opposite to Alf Garnett, in lots of movies. Brilliant actor, wins lots of awards for his acting. never ever denigrates the fact that he's associated with Alf Garnett. I mean, he's not proud of the character, but he's proud of the
effect it had. Yeah. Okay, so I don't really know much about Dandy Nichols, who played his wife, Else.
Yeah, one thing to point out is that Warren Mitchell, when he's playing Alf Garnett, is 41.
Oh, wow.
He looks 61.
He looks 61, yeah.
Whereas Dandy Nichols is 60. And again, she's been around forever, you know, worked her way up. I think she started as a secretary and then got into acting, lots of stage work, lots of film work. Never made the mainstream, but was a really recognised character actor.
I see.
So,
and very nearly not cast in this.
Yes, it was originally Gretchen Franklin, Ethel Skinner from EastEnders, Little Willie.
Oh, yes.
Played the role in the pilot that was filmed.
I see.
But then was on stage and couldn't get out of her contract to do the TV role.
I see. It could have all gone so differently for Gretchen Franklin, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so then Alf Garnett's daughter, played by Una Stubbs. What can we say about Una Stubbs?
God, I'm a bit in love with Una Stubbs.
Yeah.
You know, she was just fab, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was great. Obviously went on to other roles, but kind of notably Aunt Sally in Wurzel Gummidge.
Legend.
Yeah.
There's a woman after my own heart.
Yeah.
She was such a twat, wasn't she? I loved her.
She was so rude and she was so horrible to Wurzel, wasn't she?
Oh, she was great.
Yeah.
And obviously a mainstay of Give Us a Clue.
Give Us a Clue. And then she went on to play Honey's mum in EastEnders. If you put them side by side, Emma Barton, who plays Honey, looks
she does
very much like Una Stubbs. Una Stubbs.
And one of her last roles was Mrs. Hutton in Sherlock, the Sherlock revival.
Right,
had a real renaissance, blooming renaissance in her late career, which is lovely.
And then Tony Booth, who plays Una Stubbs' husband in this. So what can we say about him?
Well, I mean, had a bit of a career, but had problems with drink. Had 8 daughters by 5 different women.
Wow, he's busy.
Really busy. Was having an on-off love affair with Pat Phoenix, Elsie Tanner from Coronation Street.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what year it was, but had a terrible accident at home. When drunk, he fell into a vat of paraffin or something and got really badly burnt.
Oh, my goodness.
And ended up in hospital for 6 months. And then was taken in by Pat Phoenix, who looked after him. But she died of lung cancer quite soon after.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I think there's like a little biopic kind of series about Pat and Tony.
Is there?
Yeah.
Right.
I might have to look that up and have a watch.
And of course, Cherie Booth's father, I think, Tony Blair's wife's father.
Yeah.
Were they estranged for a while? I can't remember, but I think there was some. But yeah, I mean, bit of a tragic figure, unfortunately.
Right. So, okay, let's wrap this up then. So Death Us Do Part.
What would you rate it?
I would rate it quite highly in terms of script, in terms of performance, in terms of social commentary at the time. Marks against it are obviously the hideously racist vocabulary, which you can't really excuse now, even if you could excuse it then as vernacular that people used. But yeah, I did enjoy it, apart from that element. I would say 8 out of 10.
8 what out of 10? Give her...
I would say 8 portraits of Queen Elizabeth II out of 10.
Right. I would, as a piece of telly, I think I'd give it 7 Daily Mirrors out of 10. Mm-hmm. As a piece of social history, I would give it 10 racist bigots out of 10.
Fantastic.
Because I just really enjoyed the history of it.
Yeah.
And where it was. I'm pleased we watched it.
I'm really pleased we watched it. I'm really pleased to suggest it. And like you said, out of everything we've watched, it was the piece of pop culture that was the richest, that gave us the most, I think. We'll put a link in our show notes. I'd urge anyone to just take 25 minutes out of your day to have a watch of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pat yourself on the back, darling.
Pat myself on the back.
Yeah.
So what are we doing next week, Dave?
So next week is my choice, and it's a show that I've seen repeatedly and absolutely love, and it has become a kind of LGBT cult classic, I would say. And it is a US TV show called The Comeback, starring Lisa Kudrow, and it's from 2005.
Right. Never seen it. Never heard of it.
Great.
Actually.
I like the fact you haven't seen it or heard of it. I'd be really interested to see what you think. I think it's problematic in the sense of it's not problematic in itself, but it does throw up some really pertinent questions about the trappings of fame and about women ageing in the TV and film industry, particularly in Hollywood.
Right.
Really
Look forward to that.
interested. Yeah.
Great. Right, I'm going to get my flat cap on and go to my National Front meeting. What are you up to?
I might just get the kettle on and make a nice cup of tea.
Lovely.
A nice cup of splosh. So, till next week, please do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review because they really help to spread the word of the Problematic Gays. If you want to email us with any comments on anything you've heard in any of our episodes, or if you want to suggest future topics, please do. And if you want to follow us on our socials, we're at Podcast Gays on Instagram and TikTok. Get us?
Get us.
Yeah. All right then.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.